as I was researching for this episode, I read a couple of commentators saying, "Why are you in the Labour Party? Shouldn't you be in a different party or an independent candidate?" And I think it would be interesting for people watching and listening to talk about how, because the benefits cuts are Labour benefits cuts, and you're a Labour MP, but you disagree with them. And so, how does that work? Are you there's a whip, but you're disagreeing, and how do you work within your party to decide on policy?
I mean, I think I always then ask the question, why should I not be in the Labour Party? The Labour Party was formed on a certain set of principles to which I continue to adhere. And as far as I'm concerned, it is still meant to be that party. Yes, there may be people within the party that, and this has not just been during my time, that may have not adhered to those principles. But I think about it in terms of being a Black woman and generally being told quite a lot of the time that this space isn't for you and perhaps you should leave. Why should I leave? I hold to those core values. It's my party.
I suppose those commentators were saying that the current Labour Party seems to be doing some things which perhaps aren't uh, don't really comply with that historical view of what the Labour Party used to be, and
Absolutely.
so
And our country at the moment, on many occasions, again, before I was born, would do things which don't necessarily subscribe to what we claim to be British values, but we haven't all surrendered our British passports and left. I suppose my argument is more about holding space and holding what I hold dear. And I believe that a Labour Party can do a great deal of good, and I stand firmly on those principles on which they were founded. And I hope, and I have to live by hope, that things will change. Even at this late stage, they could still change their mind on those awful disability cuts. And I really, really do hope that they do. But even if they don't, it's my party, and I'll continue to keep fighting to make sure that we hold firm to those
And
principles.
do you think they'll do anything about democratic reform? Because I know they're talking about, and I think something's going through Parliament about changing the laws, but it's just changing one bit of it, which is the hereditaries. They're not.
There's
It,
also votes at 16. I'm trying to think about what else.
the bishops are staying, which is a bit
Bishops
odd.
staying.
Yeah, and obviously they're not going anywhere near the Crown just yet. But I mean, do you think there's? I always feel like it's very, very tentative, small piecemeal bits of reform that they do.
It is. I mean, and I think some of the institutions against which we would rather they railed seem to loom quite large. That shouldn't be a reason not to take them on. But I'm always surprised about the slight retreat on these kind of issues when there should be reform. But actually, I'm also quite surprised about the fact that even those of us that are Democrats, or even those of us that are, think about Republic in a certain way, always seem to focus quite heavily on leaders. And I don't know if that is just a hangover from, the feudal systems as they used to be. We always focus on who's the leader, who's in charge,
yeah,
and
and that really sets the tone.
it really does set the tone. And it shouldn't. It really shouldn't, because if we believe in our institutions the way they should be, what we should have is absolutely a competent person to lead them, but they should not be the be-all and end-all, because
No.
it's about the institution and the organization in itself, and not the figurehead, because the figurehead is meant to do what is asked of the members or the beneficiaries of said institution. And we shouldn't be so heavily focused on them. But I feel that, I don't know, maybe it's in the same way we can't think of race in any other way. It's because we have been taught to think of things in that way for so long. There are
It's this
kings.
kind of hierarchy that we live in, isn't it? Yeah.
Part of my argument for a republic is to rebalance the power between government and parliament and people. And I sort of, this has been going on for a very long time. People were talking about this in the 70s, which is the shift of power from parliament to government. I mean, as an MP, was it now 6 years, do you find that if you're not in government, then your actual power is pretty limited? It's just a matter of, whatever influence you can exert.
Absolutely. It's about being a loudmouth. I know it sounds like a terrible thing to say, but I remember speaking to a politician from, I think it's Kenya, and I think it was Kenya, and he was talking about what MPs do there. And basically, in your constituency, you are given control over the budgets for, I think, education and a few other things. And he's like, so what's it like in the UK? And I was like, oh, no, we don't have control over any budgets. So he said, so what do you do? And I said, well, we advocate and we make laws. It's a very, very difficult space
But even the
to be
lawmaking
in.
is fairly controlled and managed, isn't it?
The lawmaking, I mean,
yeah.
we have our whips, we have the fact that the entire process. But it's interesting because what I've always found, and I always like to challenge these things, is we're always told that this is the way that things are done. But whenever people want to change it, they always seem to be able to. So this is the way where things were done, except for when we wanted to ram through the coronavirus laws. This is the way that things were done, except for when we wanted to do Brexit. And all of a sudden, all of the things that we just couldn't do were possible.
Yeah.
Do you think there's too much of a reverence in the UK for establishment?
Absolutely. We love it. Even the ones we hate for some reason, we seem to love. And I just think, again, it is that historical kind of hangover. It's what we've been taught to respect. I think about what we're taught in schools, and I always, particularly when talking about the teaching of Black history in schools as a form of reparations, it's that we are taught what they want us to respect. So we are taught about the royal family. And, learning about Henry VIII was excellent high drama. I mean, it's just, what a story. Things like that. And it's not that I didn't find them interesting at all, but we were taught about them in a certain way because we were meant to treat them with reverence. But then we're not taught about a range of other things. I wasn't taught about taught about the poll tax riots. I wasn't taught about the miners' strikes in the same way I wasn't taught about the Bristol bus boycotts, which was part of Black civil rights history in the UK.
You've made me feel old because the poll tax riots were going on when I was doing my GCSE.
Yeah, no, but when I think about
couldn't have been taught about
it,
them.
could have been taught about. When I think about it, is it because they don't want young people to learn that actually they have some agency, and if they don't think that something's right, they have the ability to rail against it, and if they persevere, they might just win.